Welcome back to the Redemption Files. I'm your host, Abby Turner. Today's story is inspired by a friend I met at university many years ago. Her life took her to America, where she lives her best life in Los Angeles, California. This is for you, Audrey. Thanks for the inspiration. Property Hearts. Chapter 1. Hot Yoga and Other Bad Decisions. Los Angeles wasn't built for the honest. That's what Audrey Langley told herself every time she parallel parked her 6-year-old BMW between a G-Wagon and a Range Rover with Texas plates. She was 32, blonde, 5'2", and carried herself with confidence. Like someone who'd read every self-help book and decided to ignore all of them. Audrey worked in luxury real estate, mostly because she liked snooping through the homes of people richer than God and twice as insufferable. The job required her to smile a lot and lie even more, but she was good at both, or used to be. The truth? She hadn't sold a house in 6 months. Her last client ghosted her after she told him his modern rustic mansion looked like a crate and barrel catalogue throughout. Today, she was running late to hot yoga, which was ironic because she hated yoga and was lukewarm on heat. But she had to keep up the illusion that everything was fine. And in LA, nothing says I'm totally thriving like being drenched in your own sweat, while a woman named Sage tells you to breathe through your trauma. She parked illegally, grabbed her overpriced water bottle, and jogged across Sunset Boulevard like a woman who had not just cried in her car while listening to Alanis Morissette on repeat. Inside the studio, she spotted her ex-fiancé's sister, Chelsea. Fantastic. Chelsea had the warmth of an open fridge door. She also still followed Audrey on Instagram solely to critique her stories. "Oh, Audrey," Chelsea said, like she'd just stepped in something. "Didn't know you still came here." "I don't," Audrey replied. "Just dropped by to see if sweat and regret still go together." "Good news, they do." Chelsea blinked. "You look good." That was Los Angeles code for, "You look like you haven't slept since the betrayal, but your Botox is holding up. So congrats." "Thanks, just living my truth," Audrey said. "How's Ben?" The question hung in the air, like bad incense. Ben. The ex, also known as the man who proposed at the Griffith Observatory, then cheated with a 24-year-old named Sky who pronounced it Sky. Chelsea shrugged. "He's fine. Alive, then," Audrey said flatly. "Good for him." Hot yoga was predictably unbearable. The instructor, who looked like she moonlighted as a backup dancer for Dua Lipa, kept telling the class to lean into discomfort, which Audrey found deeply ironic, considering half the class was surgically incapable of frowning. Afterward, drenched in sweat and shame, Audrey wandered into the juice bar next door and ordered something green that tasted like punishment. She sat outside, staring into the abyss of a $12 kale smoothie when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Is this Audrey Langley? I need a realtor, urgently, and I only work with people who aren't idiots." She stared at it, eyebrow raised. In LA, that could be a potential client or a narcissist with good taste, often both. "Audrey, I'm listening. I'm not currently being an idiot. Unknown number. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., Palisades. No name, no address, just vibes." Audrey closed her eyes, sipped her kale disaster and sighed. Just another Tuesday. In a city where everyone's either selling something or pretending they're not completely broken inside. And Audrey? She was a little bit of both. Chapter 2. Palisades and Petty Ghosts. Audrey had a rule about strangers. Never trust a man who leads with urgency and insult. But this was Los Angeles, and rules were more like vague guidelines unless you were in parking enforcement. She woke up the next morning, slapped on concealer and confidence in equal measure, and drove to the Palisades like someone who wasn't still thinking about her ex's Spotify playlists. The air smelled like eucalyptus and generational wealth, her two least favorite scents. The address turned out to be a modern architectural monstrosity on a cliff, the kind of place that screamed, "I have a vitamin IV drip guy, and I ghosted my therapist because she got too close." She rang the bell. A man answered the door. Mid-30s, tall, tan, stubbled jawline like a cologne come to life. He wore a black t-shirt, the universal uniform of men with commitment issues. But his eyes were clear and familiar in a way that made her stomach sink. It took her a beat to comprehend. Oh no, she thought. It couldn't be him, but it was him, Eli Rourke, the boy she almost married, the one before Ben, the one who left her 5 years ago with nothing but a text that said, "I can't do this anymore, you deserve better." And now here he was, standing in front of a $12 million glass house, like he hadn't detonated her heart and disappeared. "Hi, Audrey," he said, like they were old friends running into each other at Erewhon. She blinked dazedly. "Is this a prank? Am I being filmed? Are there cameras in the kombucha?" He had the decency to look sheepish. "I need a realtor, and you're the best." She crossed her arms. "Flattery? From a man who ghosted me before ghosting was a trend? You're 2 years too late and 5 therapy sessions too short." "I deserve that," he said. "But I'm serious. I need to sell this house and kind of fast." Audrey looked around. The home was pristine but hollow, like someone had tried to decorate their feelings and failed. "What happened? Did your emotional un-Audrey-ability finally file for divorce?" Eli smirked, and for a horrifying second, she remembered why she'd fallen for him. He had that smile, half apology, half invitation to ruin your life. "No divorce," he said. "Just a lot of regrets, starting with how things ended with you." "Oh, please," she said, stepping inside anyway. "If you're trying to sell me closure, I'm not buying, but I'll sell your house, on one condition." He raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "You don't get to play sad boy realtor with me. I'm here for business, not for your redemption arc." "That's fair," he said. "Also," she added, turning on her heel to inspect the absurdly open floor plan, "you owe me 6 years of emotional damage and 1 Adele album." Eli laughed, a sound that scraped at her ribcage. They walked through the property in silence, Audrey taking notes and pretending she wasn't cataloguing all the ways his life had evolved, while hers felt perpetually paused. The kitchen had marble counters and an espresso machine worth more than her first car. The bedroom was minimalist and sad, kind of like him, honestly. "I'll need staging," she said, "and probably a priest. This place has breakup energy." He followed her to the balcony, where the ocean spread out like a smug, endless secret. "You look good, Audrey," he said, not for the first time. She ignored the warmth in her chest. "You should try it sometime." They stood in silence, the kind that wasn't awkward, just heavy with things unsaid. He finally spoke. "I know I hurt you." Audrey didn't look at him. "You didn't hurt me. You detonated me." He didn't argue. And maybe that's what hurt most, that he knew. Later that night, she drove home to her Corrytown apartment. Small, loud, cluttered with expired candles and good intentions. She flopped onto her couch, cracked open a bottle of Trader Joe's Red, and stared at her phone. Chelsea had posted a photo of Ben and Sky at some rooftop opening. Sky was holding a cocktail and a rescue Pomeranian. Ben was wearing the same smug expression he had the night he broke the news. "Audrey, I just don't feel seen anymore." Right. Because apparently, what he needed was to be seen by someone with 43,000 Instagram followers and a skincare line. She turned her phone face down, then picked it up again. "Audrey, okay, I'll sell your house, but if you try to pull any emotional crap, I'm charging double." "Eli, deal. Also, for the record, I never stopped regretting you." She stared at the message, then at the wine. "Don't fall for it," she muttered. "Don't you dare fall for the plot twist." But deep down, she knew this wasn't a beginning. It was a return, and returns were messy, especially in LA. Chapter 3. The Exorcism of Staged Living. Eli Rourke, in addition to being a professional heartbreaker, had also apparently mastered the art of homeownership. His house had clean lines, massive windows, and absolutely no soul. It was the architectural equivalent of a first date who brags about his crypto portfolio and doesn't ask you a single question. Audrey arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, dressed in her best blazer and battle armor. Today's armor included designer sunglasses, a strong cold brew, and zero emotional Audrey-ability. Eli opened the door wearing joggers and a Henley shirt, which felt like a personal attack. "You're early," he said. "You're underdressed," she replied. "Unless this is a very elaborate Lululemon ad." He smirked. "Want a coffee?" I don't accept drinks from exes unless they're served in a courtroom. He held up his hands. Noted. She stepped into the living room, now scattered with swatches, staging catalogues, and a single decorative pillow that looked like it had been through a divorce. You attempted staging? She asked, picking up the pillow like it might bite. I tried. I gave up halfway through an HGTV binge. Everything started to blur together after the third distressed wood coffee table. Audrey dropped her bag and got to work, rearranging furniture with the precision of a woman who both hated and needed this commission. She snapped photos, made notes, and bossed him around like the ghost of every ex-girlfriend who'd ever wanted closure and instead got gaslit. You need plants, she said, gesturing at a bare corner. Greenery says I have emotional depth, even if you don't. He leaned against the doorway, watching her. I missed this, he said softly. She didn't look up. The brutal honesty or the unpaid labor? He laughed. Both. She froze for half a second, just enough for him to notice. Damn it. I still don't get why you left, she said, barely audible. You just disappeared. Eli didn't answer right away. He walked to the window, staring out at the endless blue horizon, like it held the answers he never gave. I was scared, he said finally. You were all in, and I wasn't sure I could meet you there. Audrey turned to him, arms crossed. So instead of trying, you just, what? Vanished? Classic male bravery, he winced. I know. No, you don't, she said. Because if you did, you wouldn't have waited 5 years to call. I didn't know if I had the right. You didn't, she snapped. But here we are. They stared at each other across a pristine living room full of lies and mid-century modern furniture. He nodded slowly. Okay, business only. Got it. Audrey exhaled, tension leaking from her like air from a luxury air mattress. Good. She resumed fluffing pillows and reasserting dominance. He didn't speak again until she reached the front door. I'm glad it's you, he said. She paused, one hand on the knob. Don't get sentimental. I charge extra for nostalgia, he grinned. You always did. Later, Audrey sat in her car outside the house, breathing like she'd just finished a marathon she hadn't trained for. Her phone buzzed. It was her best friend, Nia. Nia, how did the mystery client go? Serial killer or tech bro? Audrey, neither. Worse. Eli, Rourke? As in ghosted you like a bad Halloween party. The one and only. Girl, just, no. I know. But the house is gorgeous and I need the money. So sell it. But don't let him back in your heart. That man is basically a human cliffhanger. Audrey stared out at the palm trees, swaying like they weren't all carrying secrets. Too late, she thought. He never really left. The next morning, she met with the stagers, who were named things like Bliss and Camden, and had the energy of a Peloton leaderboard on cocaine. Bliss surveyed the house with intense focus. We need emotional narrative. This home says tech divorcee, but we want romantic reinvention. Audrey blinked. I honestly have no notes. Go wild. Camden flipped his man bun. We'll go minimal sentimental, soft throws, structured rugs, vulnerable masculinity. Audrey turned to Eli. You're about to be emotionally manipulated by furniture. He raised a brow. Isn't that your job? Don't tempt me, she said. I know where you hide your liquor. By the end of the day, the house looked like an apology, with hardwood floors. Audrey approved every inch, then handed him a folder. These are the listing photos, the open house schedule, and a list of things not to say to potential buyers. Like, I'm selling this place because I destroyed someone who once loved me. Eli took the folder. You're really good at this. She shrugged. I have unresolved trauma and a good eye for lighting. It's a gift. He smiled again, that same damn smile. Do you ever think about what might have happened if I hadn't? No, she cut in, because I lived it. And with that, she left. Heart intact, sort of. Maybe. Chapter 4. Open house, open wounds. Saturday morning arrived like a suspicious compliment. Too bright, too enthusiastic, and reeking of forced optimism. Audrey rolled up to the Palisades house in her usual uniform. Sleek blazer, perfect ponytail, and a face that said, I dare you to ask me if the floors are original. The stagers had done their job too well. The house looked warm, inviting, like someone with feelings might live there. It gave her hives. Eli was already there, wearing another Henley, this time grey, rude, looking both helpful and haunted, exactly the vibe buyers love. Audrey had warned him not to speak unless spoken to, like a Victorian child or a tech bro trying to break into wellness real estate. "Don't flirt," she said under her breath, as the first guests pulled into the driveway. "And don't get philosophical about the ocean. This is real estate, not a breakup album." Eli raised an eyebrow. "You really think I'd flirt? You flirt with the barista, and she's legally obligated to talk to you." He gave a helpless smile. "Okay, silent brooding only. Good boy," she muttered. The first wave of visitors came and went with the usual questions. "Is the wine fridge built in?" "Yes." "Are the neighbors cool?" "No idea, but one of them jogs shirtless and you're welcome." "Is this couch included?" "It's staged, like your last relationship." It was all going swimmingly until she arrived. Tall, stunning, silk jumpsuit. The kind of woman who didn't use dating apps because she had options. She strolled through the house like she owned it, and possibly the deed to your soul. Audrey clocked her from the moment she stepped inside. The woman paused in the entryway, breathing it in. "Wow, this place has a story." Audrey gave her best polite smile. "And you must be a psychic or a novelist." She laughed. "Neither. I'm Margot." She extended a perfectly manicured hand. "I saw the listing last night and couldn't resist." "Welcome, Margot. Feel free to take your time. Everything you see is custom or cursed, depending on your vibe." Margot wandered from room to room with slow, deliberate steps, asking unusually specific questions. "Was the owner the original builder?" "No, they bought it." "Has the property ever had a breakup, a death, a big shift in energy?" Audrey blinked. "Ma'am, this is a house, not a haunted doll." Margot smiled. "Homes hold on to things. You can always tell when a space has unfinished business." Audrey stiffened slightly. "Well, I find a lavender diffuser and fresh staging usually does the trick." Margot gave her a look. "And what about you? You seem like someone who knows how to bury a story." Audrey smiled, tight. "Oh, I don't bury stories, I sell them." Just then, Eli appeared from the back patio, carrying water bottles like a rom-com extra. Margot's eyes flicked to him. "Is that the owner?" Audrey hesitated. "Yes." Margot watched him like a lion might watch a wounded antelope. "Huh," she said softly. "Interesting." "What is interesting?" She turned back to Audrey. "Nothing. Just familiar energy." She didn't elaborate. She didn't have to. Later, once the last guest left and the scent of citrus cleaner had faded, Audrey closed her folder and turned to Eli. "Who is she?" "Who?" "The jumpsuit. Margot. She asked about unfinished business, like she was casting a spell." Eli looked genuinely puzzled. "No idea. Never seen her before." "She looked at you, like she'd read your diary." He shrugged. "Maybe she's just intense." In Los Angeles, intense is usually code for, has a podcast and an ex she refers to as a karmic lesson. Audrey glanced down at her notes. Margot hadn't filled out a buyer's form. She hadn't left a card. She'd just wandered in, stirred the air, and disappeared. "Creepy energy," she muttered. "Want me to run a background check?" Eli offered, jokingly. "Yes," she said, deadpan. "And if she turns out to be your cult leader or a psychic revenge ex, I'm burning the house down." He smiled. "You're enjoying this." "No, I'm surviving it. There's a difference." They stood in the kitchen, surrounded by fake fruit and real tension. "Do you think she'll make an offer?" Eli asked. Audrey looked at him. Really looked. "I think she already has, just not on the house." That night, Audrey lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan like it owed her answers. Something about Margot nagged at her. And not just because she had the kind of hair you could only get from a $400 haircut, and the tears of sea nymphs. No, Margot knew something, and Audrey had a creeping suspicion that this listing, the house, Eli, all of it, was going to unearth more than old memories. Because if LA was good at anything, It was pretending the past didn't exist. Right up until it rang the doorbell. Chapter 5. Breadcrumbs and blood orange seltzer. Audrey was not obsessed. She was simply curious, professionally. So what if she'd spent part of her Sunday morning Googling Margot silk jumpsuit, Pacific Palisades, weird questions, house ghosts? It's called due diligence. Any responsible listing agent would do it. She didn't find much. A few LinkedIn results, one Pinterest board full of moody interiors and quotes about Rebirth, and a single obscure podcast episode titled When the House Whispers Back, Real Estate, Energy Work and Past Lives, hosted by, of course, Margot Vi. Vi, not a common last name, not a coincidence. Audrey clicked play and poured herself a blood orange seltzer, the drink of choice for people trying to convince themselves they're hydrated and emotionally balanced. Margot's voice came through the speakers, soft, hypnotic, like she could sell you a quartz crystal that ruins your life. Houses have memory. They're not just structures, they're living organisms, and when we move through them, especially after trauma, we leave fingerprints, echoes. Audrey took a long sip. Sometimes, Margot continued, people think they're buying a home, but what they're really stepping into is someone else's unfinished story. That's where I come in. Jesus Christ, Audrey muttered. She's a spiritual home inspector. She scrubbed forward. There was one property in LA. Gorgeous place. Mid-century dream. But the energy was so dense, so heavy with regret, I could barely breathe. The owner didn't want to sell. Not really. He wanted to be forgiven. Audrey's stomach twisted, because she knew exactly which house Margot was talking about. Later that afternoon, Audrey met Nia for brunch at a cafe that only served things inside mason jars. Nia was sipping a mimosa like it was a weapon. So, let me get this straight, she said, poking at her deconstructed avocado toast. The woman who crash-landed your open house is a real estate medium? She doesn't call herself that. But yes, essentially. I hate how much I love this. She was on a podcast, Nia, talking about the house. His house, Eli's. Nia raised an eyebrow. Okay, but what's her angle? You don't just walk into someone's listing like a soul whisperer, unless you've got a reason. That's what I'm trying to figure out, Audrey said, pulling out her phone. She didn't leave any info. No card, no follow-up. But she knew something. She felt something. Nia grinned. Oh no, you're in it now. I'm not in it. You're absolutely in it. You're spiraling. Emotionally, psychologically, hell, probably feng shui lightly. Audrey slumped in her seat. I just want to sell a house without an existential subplot. You should have gone into commercial real estate. You don't get haunted by old flames in strip malls. Too late now. That evening, Audrey returned to Eli's house to check on a minor leak in the upstairs guest bath. Because of course, the universe never skips a chance to throw a little literal water damage into a figurative flood. She let herself in. The house was empty, or so she thought. As she came down the stairs, she heard soft piano music, live. She turned the corner, and there he was. Eli at the baby grand in the corner of the living room, fingers drifting over keys, like he was remembering something he never quite forgot. You play now? She asked. He looked up. Startled but not embarrassed. Not well. Just noise to think. Audrey leaned against the wall. You're thinking a lot these days. He looked at her. You saw her, didn't you? Margot? He nodded. I figured she'd leave an impression. She described your house on a podcast. Eli stopped playing. Seriously, she said the owner needed forgiveness. He stared at the keys. She's not wrong. Audrey walked over, arms crossed. Who is she? I met her at some weird fundraiser in Topanga. One of those healing breathwork things I went to with my therapist friend. We talked for like 15 minutes. I thought she was interesting. That was it. So why is she showing up now? Why here? Eli looked at her. Really looked. I think she's not here for me. Audrey swallowed. What does that mean? I think she's here. For you. The silence between them was heavy, ancient. The kind of silence that gets written into novels and breakup texts. Audrey took a step back. I'm going to check on the leak. He didn't stop her. didn't follow, didn't explain. Later that night, Audrey listened to the rest of Margot's podcast, while scrubbing grout and trying not to assign meaning to her own emotional mold. At the very end, Margot's voice got low, intimate. Sometimes, the house doesn't want to be sold. Sometimes it wants to tell its story. Sometimes it wants someone to listen. Audrey slammed her laptop shut. She didn't have time for metaphors. She had a listing to close, a past to ignore, and a buyer to find, preferably one who didn't moonlight as a ghost therapist. Chapter 6. Some offers come with ghosts. Monday morning in Los Angeles had a scent. Burnt espresso, warm asphalt, and the vaguely anxious undertone of someone who just realized their influencer roommate used all the hot water. Audrey was already half a latte in when her phone buzzed. Margot Vi, 10:17 a.m. Hey Audrey, thinking a lot about the house, would love to talk, in person. Can we meet? Audrey stared at the screen. There it was again, those annoying velvet-gloved vibes Margot had. She didn't ask to meet, she invited destiny to rearrange itself for her. Audrey typed a reply. Audrey, 10:18 a.m. I'll be at the house at 2. Don't bring sage. By the time Margot arrived, Audrey had already replaced the upstairs pipe, contractor friend, one favour, and the promise of Laker tickets, and staged the kitchen with fresh oranges and a new copy of Architectural Digest, turned deliberately to an article on minimalist boundaries. Margot walked in like she'd been summoned, not by Audrey, but by the bones of the building itself. It's changed, she said, closing the door behind her. You're 2 days late for a séance, Audrey replied. Margot gave her that maddening half smile. I'm not here to cleanse anything. I'm here to buy it. Audrey blinked. Excuse me? I want the house, Margot stated. You're not even a real buyer. You didn't submit a form. You asked if the walls felt grief. Margot shrugged. I'm cash. No contingencies. I've been looking for a space to turn into a retreat. This one speaks. Audrey crossed her arms. Does it also ask for $3.5 million and a new water heater? Margot pulled a folder from her bag and placed it on the counter. Offers inside. I've already spoken to my attorney. It's clean. All it needs is Eli's signature. Audrey didn't open it, because this wasn't a business deal. It was a trap, dressed as escrow. What do you want with him? She asked quietly. Margot tilted her head. Nothing, Audrey smirked. Liar. I want what's here. She gestured around the room. This history. This story caught between chapters. I'm the listing agent, Audrey said coolly. Not a novelist. Margot leaned in, voice soft. Then why does it feel like you're stuck in the prologue? Audrey's jaw tightened. You're not buying this house. Why not? Because it's not for sale to people who collect stories, instead of telling the truth. Margot didn't flinch, just straightened her shoulders and smiled. You'll change your mind when the house lets you. And with that, she turned and left. Again, without saying goodbye. Audrey sat in the kitchen for a long time after she was gone. Then she opened the folder. $3.45 million. Cash. Close in 15 days. No inspections. No contingencies. No soul, if you asked her. That night, Audrey called Nia. She made an offer. Please tell me she offered you cash, 3 crystals, and a signed copy of her podcast transcript. No. Actual money. A lot of it. Nia whistled. So, what's the problem? She's not buying a house. She's buying him. Or maybe me. Or maybe the energy of our mutual collapse. I don't know. I'm exhausted. Wouldn't be the first time someone tried to redecorate emotional trauma. She said, I'm stuck in the prologue. Nia went quiet for a second. That's annoyingly poetic. I hate that it hit. You are kind of an emotional escrow, Audrey groaned. Do you want to sell the house? I don't know. Do you want to sell it to her? No. Then don't. It's not that simple. Babe, you make everything complicated. It's your love language. Audrey sighed. I need a second opinion. The next morning, she met Eli on the back patio, where he was drinking coffee and looking like a man who had learned to fold his regrets into origami. "She made an offer," Audrey said, dropping the folder on the table. He didn't touch it. "She say why?" he asked. "She said the house spoke, and that it wants someone to listen." He gave a short laugh. "Sounds like her." "I told her no." Eli looked up. "Why?" Audrey didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked over to the edge of the patio, staring out at the ocean like she expected it to clap back. "Because she wants to buy something that doesn't belong to her," she finally said. "Not just this house, this story, our story." Eli stood, walked toward her. Not close, but closer than he had in months. "You think this story's still ours?" he asked quietly. "I think I'm still trying to figure out where it ends." He looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe it doesn't." Audrey turned to him. "That's not comforting." "I didn't mean it to be." They stood there, suspended in something that felt too sharp to be nostalgia and too familiar to be closure. Later, as she drove away, Audrey didn't feel triumphant. She felt aware of the choices she hadn't made, the endings she'd delayed, and the buyer she was becoming, one who didn't settle, even if the offer was perfect on paper, because some sales came with strings, and Audrey Langley didn't do Haunted. Not anymore. Chapter 7. Compromised with a View. The brokerage office smelled like anxiety and eucalyptus. The anxiety was Audrey's. The eucalyptus came from an oil diffuser that Cheryl, the office manager, swore improved productivity. Audrey was unconvinced, mostly because it hadn't yet diffused Cheryl. She was halfway through a bland bagel and a much-needed spreadsheet when her boss, Victor, called her into his glass-walled office with the tone of someone who'd just discovered his Tesla got keyed by a kindergartner wielding a Hot Wheels. Victor had the look of a man who wore expensive socks and resented having to explain anything twice. "Come in, Audrey," he said, gesturing to the chair like it was part of an interrogation set. "Something wrong?" she asked, already bracing. Victor adjusted his cuffs. "I got a call from Margot Vi." "Of course she did. She's not a client. She's also not a nobody. Her retreat center in Ojai is booked for the next 18 months and apparently features something called Trauma Rewind Yoga." Audrey blinked. "Is that where they stretch your memories until they snap?" "She says you turned down her cash offer on the Palisades property." "I didn't turn it down. I postponed consideration." Victor looked unimpressed. "That house has been on the market for 2 weeks with minimal movement. And now a buyer offers full price, all cash, no inspection. And you hesitate?" "She's not just buying the house," Audrey said carefully. "She's buying the narrative." Victor's face did that thing where he tried to process feelings, but only had access to the black and white printer in his emotional toolkit. "I don't care if she's buying a portal to Narnia. If it's legal and it closes, we move it. That's your job." Audrey stood. "I understand, but I'm not compromising for the sake of optics. I have a responsibility to Eli." Victor smirked. "Oh, Eli, I see." There it was. The implication, the history, the tone. "Watch it," she said. Victor sighed. "I'm not here to dissect your romantic past. I'm here to make sure your professional present doesn't cost this firm a $500,000 commission. Handle it, Audrey, or I will." She left the office with rage clacking in her heels and a fresh migraine blooming in the shape of a podcast host. By the time she got to her car, she had a missed call and a text. Unknown number. 12:04 p.m. "You still driving that beat-up Audi? Or did you finally get the Tesla you always swore you'd hate, Grayson?" Her stomach dropped. She hadn't seen Grayson Maddox in 3 years, which was exactly how long she'd worked to forget the week they'd spent together in the kind of passionate, self-destructive haze that usually ends in therapy or court depositions. He was a real estate investor. Charming, tall, the kind of man who said things like, "Don't worry, I'll Venmo you," and then actually did. Audrey stared at the message. Then another text came through. "Grayson, 12:07 p.m. Heard about the listing. I'm interested. Let's talk. Over drinks? Or should we skip the polite parts?" She didn't answer, because of course the universe would send a capital P problem when she was already emotionally overdrawn. She drove to the Palisades, quietly, with the windows down, because when your past starts crashing into your present, the best you can do is get fresh air and maybe pretend your life has a soundtrack. Eli was there. She found him upstairs, staring at the newly repaired pipe, like it had cursed his family. "Thinking of becoming a plumber?" she asked. He didn't turn. "Grayson called me." Her stomach sank again. "Let me guess. He wants to buy the house. He also wants to take you to dinner. He's nothing if not consistent." Audrey leaned against the doorframe. "He's a mistake wrapped in a Rolex. Then why are you considering it?" "I'm not," she snapped. "He texted me 5 minutes ago. I haven't answered." Eli turned, finally. "You could have. You used to," he said. "That was a different lifetime." "Still yours," he said softly. Silence followed, the dangerous kind, the kind with teeth. Audrey walked into the room. "You didn't fix the pipe before I got the listing?" "No." "Why?" He hesitated. "Because I didn't want to let it go. Not the pipe, the house." "I know." She studied him. "Are you still not ready to move on?" He looked at her. "Are you?" Audrey didn't answer. Because what was she going to say? "I'm still walking through rooms we decorated with promises and hoping to find the door where it all went wrong." Instead, she did what she did best. She turned it into a question. "What if we're both stuck?" Eli half smiled. "Then maybe it's time we started walking. Together?" He said hopefully. "Not necessarily," she said. And somehow, that hurt more. That night, Audrey did the thing she swore she wouldn't. She texted Grayson. "Audrey, 7:32 p.m. Fine. 1 drink. No real estate talk and no smirking." Grayson, 7:35 p.m. "I never agreed to those last 2 conditions." He answered, the smile somehow able to be seen through a text. Chapter 8. 1 drink, 0 restraint. The bar Grayson picked was exactly the kind of place that made Audrey question his sincerity. Dim lighting, tufted leather booths, cocktails named things like Seasonal Disappointment, and a waitstaff that looked like they all had side hustles as DJs or tarot readers. He was already at the bar when she walked in. Same lazy confidence, same perfectly disheveled dark hair, same tailored blazer that practically screamed, "I invest in things I don't understand." "You're late," he said, turning to her with a grin. "You're exactly the same," she replied, sliding onto the stool next to him. He ordered her drink without asking. Still remembered it. She wasn't sure whether that was flattering or terrifying. "So," she said, crossing her legs, "you want the house?" Grayson swirled his whiskey. "That's not what this is." "No," she said. "I wanted to see you," he answered. "That's an expensive excuse. The drinks here are $22, and I assume the house is somewhere around $3 million. He smirked. "You always were good at math, and you were always good at pretending to care." He didn't flinch, just took a slow sip. "Okay, I deserve that, but I'm not here to play games." That's rich, coming from a man who once ghosted me while we were on a weekend trip. "I told you, I lost my phone in the ocean." "Right. After conveniently taking the charger and your passport with you." He grinned. "You know, I missed this." "What? Being insulted?" "No. Being seen." For a moment, something flickered in her, warm and awful. That feeling of remembering a good thing right before it turned bad. "Don't," she said, voice tight. "I'm serious," he said earnestly. "Don't rewrite history with charm. I've already done the hard work of forgetting you." "I didn't come back for history." "Then why?" Grayson leaned in, the smile gone. "Because I heard you were listing Eli's place, and I thought maybe you needed a way out." Audrey froze. "A way out of what?" "Whatever loop you're stuck in." She exhaled. "Jesus, you and Margot should start a commune." He leaned back, hands up. Okay, message received, no soul searching, but I do want the house." "Then make an offer, on paper, like a grown-up." He tilted his glass in her direction. "Done." They finished the drink in silence. Not hostile, just heavy. As she stood to leave, Grayson looked at her with something close to sincerity. "I never stopped thinking about you, Audrey." She met his gaze. "Then I suggest you start. It's a crowded brain space in there." She drove home with the windows down again. Not because she needed air, but because it was the only thing that felt real. By the time she walked into her apartment, she had a voicemail. "Eli, 10:17 p.m. I need to talk to you. Tonight, if possible. It's about why I didn't tell you everything. About the house. About me. I owe you that. Please." She stared at the phone like it was a foreign object. Then she changed into sweats, grabbed her keys, and drove. Because some ghosts don't text. They just sit in living rooms, waiting. He was waiting in the den, lights low, record player on, something melancholy and vinyl rich playing in the background. Maybe Nina Simone, maybe someone trying to sound like her. "I wasn't expecting you this fast," he said. "I wasn't expecting to come, so we're both surprised." He offered her tea. She declined. "Talk," she said. Eli looked older in the lamplight. Not tired exactly, just weighed down by something he hadn't unpacked yet. "When we bought this house," he began, "I thought it would fix everything." "Classic mistake," Audrey muttered. "I thought if I built something beautiful with you, it would make the ugly parts go away. The insecurity, the fear, the way I always worried you'd leave." She blinked. "Why would I leave?" "Because you had ambition. I had doubts." "About me," she said. "About myself," he answered quietly. He looked down at his hands. "The day you got that offer in New York," he continued, "I knew you'd take it. And instead of being proud, I panicked. I thought, if I told you I couldn't come with you, you'd stay. For me. And I might have," she said quietly. "I know. That's why I didn't say anything. I just pulled away, made myself impossible to love. And when it worked, when you left, I hated myself for being right." Audrey felt something break, not sharply, more like a soft snap, like thread pulling free. "You could have just told me," she said. "I know." He looked down. They sat in silence. The record crackled. Somewhere, Nima's ghost sang about lost time. "I still think about that house like it's ours," he admitted. "Well, it was, until it wasn't. And now? I'm not sure." When she finally left, the night air felt heavier than usual, like it was holding its breath. She didn't cry, not because she wasn't sad, but because grief, when it's old enough, just sighs. Chapter 9. Open houses, closed doors. Monday started like all tragic Mondays do, with a fresh flood of emails, a burnt almond milk latte, and Cheryl humming Eye of the Tiger while color-coding her desk folders. Audrey was mid-scroll when Victor's voice pierced the fluorescent air like a tax audit. "You've got 3 offers," he said, marching into her cubicle like the ghost of real estate present. Audrey blinked. 3? He nodded, slapping a manila folder on her desk with the gusto of someone who'd just survived a HOA meeting. Margot Vi came back with a cash counter 50,000 over asking. No contingencies. Wants a quick close so she can start gutting the kitchen and installing her healing grotto. Audrey groaned. "That's not a thing." Victor ignored her. Grayson Maddox submitted a formal offer last night. Matches asking, includes a personal letter, and offers to waive the inspection if he can keep the wine fridge. She stared at him. The wine fridge is worth $400. He thinks sentiment adds value. That, or he's still trying to date you via square footage. Audrey pinched the bridge of her nose. And the third? Victor's eyes gleamed. Wildcard. Anonymous LLC. Offers lower by 25 grand, but there's a clause. The buyer will keep the property intact and allow Eli to remain in the guest house for 6 months post-close, rent-free. Audrey's head jerked up. Victor raised an eyebrow. "Yeah." "My thoughts exactly." She flipped open the folder, heart thudding. "Who is it?" "No name, but the LLC was just formed. Yesterday." Her phone buzzed. One message. "Eli, 9:42 a.m. We need to talk. About the house. It wasn't supposed to go this far." Audrey stared at the screen. Victor cleared his throat. "I'm not telling you what to do. But Margot's offer is clean. Grayson's offer has history. And this third one, it smells like trouble dipped in a tax shelter. She nodded slowly. So basically, greed, lust, or guilt. Victor smirked. Welcome to Escrow. She drove to the Palisades again. The ocean looked smug, like it knew things she didn't. Eli was already on the porch when she pulled up, holding 2 iced coffees, and that expression he always wore when he knew she'd be mad. You made the third offer, she said flatly. He held up the coffees. I brought oat milk. You formed an LLC to buy your own house back. He handed her a drink. Technically, to buy time. Eli. I didn't want to lose it. Not like this. Not to Margot. Not to Grayson, who, let's be honest, would probably turn it into a YouTube content house within a month. I don't know what's worse, the manipulation or the fact that you're not entirely wrong. I know it's a lot, he said, voice low. But it's not just about nostalgia. This place, it's the last thing I built that still feels like it matters. Audrey sipped her coffee. It was too sweet. Of course it was. This isn't how real estate works, she muttered. This isn't just real estate, he said. And damn it, that was the problem. Later that day, Audrey met Grayson at the rooftop of the Sycamore, one of those places that served cocktails with basil foam and had waiters who looked like they were moonlighting from an A24 film. He slid her a drink. So, tell me I got the house. You didn't. He paused. You went with Margot? No, she said quickly. He frowned. Don't say Eli. I'm not saying anything. Yet. Grayson studied her. He's still in your system, huh? He's not a virus, Grayson. Sure, but he's not exactly a firewall either. She rolled her eyes. Wow, nerd metaphors. Is this your version of personal growth? I meant what I said, Audrey. I came back for you, and I meant what I said. You laughed. They clinked glasses, like adversaries pretending to be friends. Back in her apartment, Audrey laid the offers out on her dining table. 3 neat pages. 3 impossible choices. She thought about Margot's email, full of buzzwords and condescension. About Grayson's handwritten note tucked into his offer. Let's try again. If not us, then what? And about Eli's quiet plea. Not for the house, not really, but for the grace to mourn what they were, without losing what they'd built. She could sell to Margot and walk away richer, if emptier. She could sell to Grayson and fall into a story she'd already read. Or she could accept Eli's offer and keep the house intact, symbolic and messy and wholly impractical. Audrey turned off the lights, let the city buzz outside, and finally said aloud what she hadn't been able to admit, even to herself. This was never about the house. It was about the past, the almosts, the ache of being nearly loved, nearly chosen, nearly whole. It was about her, who she'd been, who she wanted to become, and who she'd have to leave behind to get there. Chapter 10. Disclosure. Audrey didn't sleep that night. Not in the way normal people sleep. She stared at the ceiling like it owed her rent. Her thoughts a hamster wheel powered by caffeine and regret. By morning, she'd chosen, and by mid-morning, the emails were sent. 1 acceptance, 2 rejections, a single sentence each. She didn't elaborate. She didn't apologize. She chose Eli's offer, not because it was the smartest, not because it paid the most, but because somewhere deep in her marrow, it felt right, and Audrey had spent too many years being smart instead of honest. Victor called her 10 minutes later. Are you sure about this? He asked. No, she replied, but I'm doing it anyway. There was a pause. Then, softly, proud of you, kid. The fallout arrived on cue. Grayson sent a text that was basically a TED talk in heartbreak. You said you were done with him, that you wanted clean breaks, fresh starts. I guess some ghosts wear better cologne. Margot's reply was more efficient. Interesting choice. I'll be sure to send you the listing when I buy the lot next door and build a glass monstrosity that blocks his ocean view. Audrey stared at both messages, then muted them. Let them sulk. She had escrow paperwork to sign and a leftover salad to forget in the fridge. That evening, She met Eli at the house to review final documents. He looked relieved and nervous, like someone who'd proposed on a jumbotron and was still unsure if the crowd was cheering or booing. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "Good, don't say anything," she replied, pushing papers toward him. "Let's just do the deal and try not to ruin it with feelings." He smiled, but it was tinged with guilt. She could see it, the tightness in his jaw, the way he kept looking everywhere but her. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated. "There's something I didn't disclose." Audrey's blood chilled. "About the house?" "No." "About me. About why I wanted it so badly." "Eli, I'm not sick or dying," he said quickly. "It's nothing like that." She crossed her arms. "Then what?" He rubbed his temples, sighed, and finally met her eyes. "I was supposed to propose to you here, the week you got the New York job. I'd even picked the spot under that awful chandelier we both hated." Audrey blinked. "You what?" "I chickened out. Thought, if I asked you to stay for me, you'd say yes for the wrong reasons. So I let you go instead. And then I hated myself. And now I thought, if I got the house back, I could undo some of that." "Oh my God," she muttered. "You're trying to buy me back with architecture." "No." He paused. "Okay, a little." She ran a hand through her hair. "Eli, you can't repurpose a house into an apology." "I know. This isn't a rom-com. We don't get a montage. We get paperwork." He gave a half laugh. "Yeah, but at least we get that." They stood in silence, papered with memories. The hallway they'd painted one night while drunk on cheap wine. The closet, where they once hid during a fight, too exhausted to yell. The patio, where she'd told him she loved him, and he'd said it back like a promise he didn't know he couldn't keep. She took a breath. "I'm not coming back." "I didn't ask you to," he said. "But you hoped." He nodded. "Always." That night, Audrey went home to her apartment. Her small, loud, imperfect apartment, with a view of a CVS parking lot and a neighbor who played saxophone at midnight like he was summoning spirits. She poured a glass of wine, kicked off her shoes, and did something she hadn't done in a long time. She sat still. No scrolling, no plotting, no escape hatches. Just silence. And in that silence, something shifted. Not closure, not yet, but a kind of peace. Like maybe she didn't need to be the smartest, prettiest, most healed woman in every room. Maybe it was okay to just be in progress. Until her phone buzzed. "Victor, 9:56 p.m. We have a problem. Big one. Call me, now." She stared at the message. Then, another one came through. "Unknown number. 9:58 p.m. Nice little secret Eli's been hiding. Thought you should know before the ink dries." Attached. A photo. Audrey clicked. It was grainy, like all good betrayals. A screenshot from a building inspection report. Mold, structural rot, plumbing issues, all covered up. Filed under the prior inspection. The one Eli had said looked clean. Audrey dropped the phone. She'd trusted him. She'd chosen him. And he'd left out the worst part of all. Chapter 11. Buyer, beware. Audrey didn't sleep. Again, she lay awake with the photo burned into her brain like a cigarette scar. Mold, structural rot, plumbing lies. She could still hear Eli's voice in her head, soft and sincere. The report looked clean. Sure it did. If you conveniently ignored the version filed 6 months earlier, the one he somehow forgot to mention. By 7 p.m., she wasn't just furious. She was caffeinated and furious. A dangerous combination that had previously resulted in a cancelled engagement, a minor fender bender, and once, a very pointed Yelp review about brunch service. At 7:32 a.m., she marched into Victor's office with the kind of righteous fury typically reserved for courtrooms and Real Housewives reunions. He didn't even look up. "You saw the photo?" He nodded, sliding a printout across the desk. "Anonymous tip. Looks legit. This inspection was from before he moved out. Found water damage behind the guest house shower. Early stage black mold under the hardwoods. And surprise, he didn't fix it, just patched over." Audrey's hands curled into fists. He lied. Technically, he withheld material facts relevant to a sale, Victor said. But yeah, that's realtor for he lied. Do we have to report it? He gave her a long look. Do you want to? That stopped her, did she? The Audrey of 2 years ago would have buried him in red tape and called it self-care. But the Audrey of now, she wasn't sure. He said he wanted to save the house, she muttered. Victor raised an eyebrow. Funny how preservation always looks like manipulation, in a better light. She drove to the Palisades one last time. This time, no iced coffee, no smiles, just keys and confrontation. Eli opened the door like he'd been waiting for her, which he probably had. That was the thing about guilty people. They always knew the knock was coming. You knew, she said, holding up the inspection report. His face fell. Audrey. No, don't Audrey me. You sat there, fed me lattes and nostalgia, and let me sign papers while mold grew under the floor. It wasn't like that, he said. Then what was it? I thought I could fix it quietly. I just needed time and money. So you bought back your lies with the one thing you had left. Me. He flinched. She stepped past him into the living room, the scent of old pine and betrayal hanging in the air. Do you know what hurts? She said. It's not the house. It's not even the lie. It's that you knew I was finally starting to trust you again. And you weaponized that. I didn't mean to. Yes, you did, she snapped. Maybe not at first, but at some point, you made the conscious decision to let me walk into a deal blind. That's not love, Eli. That's theft with better lighting. He ran a hand through his hair. I thought if I told you, you'd back out. Of course I would have. That's the point. They stood there in silence, years between them. Finally, she said, I'm cancelling the sale. He nodded, slowly. I'll report the inspection if I have to, she added. You won't have to. Audrey blinked. What do you mean? I'll disclose it. All of it. Publicly. The next buyer will know exactly what they're getting. I won't bury it again. She narrowed her eyes. Why the sudden honor code? He smiled sadly. Because you're right. I weaponized your trust. And maybe I don't deserve the house. But you deserve the truth. You always did. She left, without saying goodbye. There wasn't anything left to say. Back at the office, Victor met her at the door, with a coffee and a raised eyebrow. Deal's dead, I suppose. Dead and buried. He sipped. You know, I've seen agents crack for less. You didn't have to walk away. Yes, I did, she said, staring out the window. The city glittered below, chaotic, untrustworthy, radiant. But I didn't break, she added. I just got honest. Later that week, she showed a new condo in West Hollywood to a young couple who'd never bought anything bigger than a bed frame. They were anxious, hopeful, undecided. And Audrey, for the first time in a long time, felt calm. Not because she had it all figured out, but because she didn't need to. You'll know when it's right, she told them. They looked at her like she was magic. And maybe she was, just a little. Because walking away from the wrong thing, that's how you make room for what comes next. Chapter 12. Public Domain. The West Hollywood condo was modern, minimalist, and trying too hard. Audrey kind of respected it. It had white walls, floating shelves, and a plant that looked so aggressively curated, it probably had its own agent. But the buyers loved it, which is all that mattered, until the door swung open, and someone Audrey had absolutely not invited walked in. Juliet Banks. Former client, former friend, current walking PR crisis in Louboutins. Juliet's smile could cut glass. Audrey froze mid-pour of cucumber water. Juliet, I didn't realize you were looking. I'm not. I just needed to talk. And your assistant said this was the only way to find you. Audrey silently cursed Becca and her sunny helpfulness. The couple wandered to the balcony, sensing drama like deer sensing a distant wildfire. Juliet lowered her voice. You're trending. Audrey blinked. What? Juliet pulled out her phone and handed it over. The screen showed a paused video. Audrey standing in Eli's hallway, furious, waving a document. A grainy voiceover said, This is what betrayal looks like in the Pacific Palisades. She hit play. There she was, full volume, full venom, calling Eli out about the mold, the lies, the theft with better lighting. Shot from someone's phone through the front window, probably a nosy neighbor with too much time in a TikTok account. Jesus Christ. Juliet snorted. You went viral. Half of LA thinks you're a legend. The other half wants to cast you in a Bravo reboot. Audrey stared at the screen, mortified. I look like I'm auditioning for Real Estate Vengeance, West Coast. Juliet leaned against the counter, amused. You say that like it's a bad thing. I don't want to be famous. You already are. And not just for the video. People are talking about your listings, your hustle, the way you walked away from that deal. Audrey raised a brow. You stalking me now? Juliet shrugged. I follow money. And right now, you're it. She slid a folder onto the counter. Inside, photos, addresses, a proposal. Audrey glanced down. What is this? A new development, Venice Beach, 8 luxury homes, all still in framing. I need someone smart, sharp, a little bit ruthless. You mean someone with a mold scandal and a bad attitude? Juliet grinned. Exactly. Victor was less enthusiastic. She's radioactive, he muttered when Audrey brought him the file. She's offering exclusivity and top commission. She's also offering front-page drama and a reputation for chewing through agents like sugar-free gum. Audrey crossed her arms. I can handle her. Victor raised a brow. I'm sure, but can you trust her? No, Audrey admitted, but I don't need to trust her. I just need to outlast her, he sighed. Fine, but I want a clause. Full autonomy. You can walk away if she pulls anything shady. Done. And if you get papped at lunch with her, wear sunglasses, the good ones. Audrey smiled. You're protective when you're nervous. I'm Jewish, he said. We invented nervous. 2 days later, Audrey walked into the Venice site in boots, black jeans, and a leather jacket she hadn't worn since 2020, back when she still believed in fate and facials. Juliet was already there, holding a hard hat and a tablet. Welcome to the future, she said. Audrey glanced around at the scaffolding in the sky. Let's hope it comes with fewer leaks. That night, back at home, Audrey poured herself a glass of wine and watched the video again. She didn't know why. Maybe to reclaim it. Maybe to understand why strangers were calling her brave. She didn't feel brave. She felt tired and cracked open. But as she watched herself in that grainy clip, furious, unfiltered, real, she saw something else too. She saw a woman who had finally stopped asking permission. And maybe that was the bravest thing of all. Chapter 13. Blueprints and Backstabs. The Venice development was a hotbed of tension, testosterone, and questionable tile choices. It was also Audrey's new kingdom. Each day brought more noise, more dust, more meetings about glass paneling and the emotional resonance of concrete. Juliet called it curated chaos. Audrey called it Tuesday. By week 3, the project had a wait list. Juliet beamed during their site walkthrough. You're magnetic, even when you're grumpy. I'm not grumpy, Audrey muttered, swatting sawdust off her blazer. I'm calculating. You say that like it's not a compliment. The video hadn't stopped circulating. There were memes now. One of them had her frozen mid-yell, with the caption, Me confronting my toxic ex and my plumbing. Victor had a mug made. Your brand is fierce honesty, he said one morning as he handed it to her. Might as well monetize it. Audrey rolled her eyes, but she kept the mug. She'd been called worse, usually by HOA presidents. He showed up on a Thursday. She was halfway through a call with a materials vendor, arguing over the tragic concept of beige grout, when he stepped onto the gravel drive in jeans, sunglasses, and a posture that screamed, I'm about to say something you won't like. She hung up mid-rant. You lost, or just masochistic. I came to apologize. Again. Why? Run out of houses to poison? He winced. That's fair. She gestured to the half-built home in front of them. This is a job site, not a redemption tour. Look, I know I screwed up, but I heard about the Venice builds, and I have a client. Audrey blinked. You want to refer someone? A developer? Private? Rich? Anonymous? They want in? She narrowed her eyes. What's the catch? None. I don't want commission. I just want to help. Call it penance. Audrey studied him. He looked different. Not sad, exactly, but emptied. Like someone who'd finally stopped trying to repaint the past and was just living in the mess of it. Give me a name, she said flatly. He handed her a card. It was blank, except for a single initial, R. Cryptic, obnoxious, Juliet level vague. Of course, she muttered. Fine, I'll talk to them. Thank you. He turned to go, but she stopped him. For what it's worth, she said, you weren't always the bad part. Just the part I outgrew. Eli nodded. I know. Then he was gone. Juliet wasn't thrilled. You're letting Eli back into your orbit, she hissed later that day, heels echoing against unfinished flooring. I'm letting a lead into my inbox, Audrey corrected. He's bad news. You're one to talk. Juliet bristled. I never lied to you. No, Audrey said. You just disappeared after our last deal tanked and resurfaced with a folder and a pitch like nothing happened. Juliet looked away. There it was, that flicker of guilt, quickly disguised. What aren't you telling me? Audrey asked. Juliet hesitated. Nothing that matters now. Juliet. Her voice dropped. My ex is the money behind this project. Audrey blinked. The one who faked bankruptcy and moved to Monaco? The very one. Oh, fantastic. This is a tax shelter wrapped in stucco. I didn't know until after you signed on. I swear. Audrey ran a hand through her hair. Do you trust him? No. Then why the hell are we doing this? Juliet's voice was small. Because if I don't finish this project, I lose everything. There it was. The desperation under the glam. The reason Juliet Banks had come crawling back to a woman she once ghosted after a contract dispute. Audrey exhaled. Okay. She almost shuddered. I'll stay. But we do this my way. Full transparency. No surprises. Juliet nodded. Deal. They shook hands. Two women bound by ambition and the sharp ache of second chances. That night, Audrey sat on her couch, wine in one hand, Eli's mysterious card in the other. She murmured, Who the hell are you? She opened her laptop and started digging. Half an hour later, she found it. A shell company tied to a real estate trust, tied to a family name she hadn't heard in years. A name that made her stomach twist. Rothwell. As in Max Rothwell, her ex-fiancé, the one before Eli. The one who left her mid-escrow and mid-engagement for a girl who sold crystals and called herself Sky. Sky now owned a juice bar in Encino. Audrey suddenly needed something stronger than wine. Chapter 14. A past due diligence. It took Audrey exactly 36 hours, 2 espresso shots, and a full-blown identity spiral to secure a meeting with Max Rothwell. The last time she'd seen him was 4 years ago, in a wine bar in Silver Lake, where he'd proposed with a ring she later discovered was leased. He left 3 weeks later, citing a need to realign his emotional investments. He also took their deposit on a 2-bedroom condo and invested it in cryptocurrency, which, ironically, felt like a perfect metaphor for Max, volatile, shiny, and mostly imaginary. Now she sat across from him at a hotel rooftop in Century City, wondering if it was too early in the day to throw a breadstick. He wore a linen button-down and smugness like cologne. Audrey, you look expensive. You look exactly like someone who names his LLC Rothwell Global Holdings and still borrows his sister's Netflix. Max grinned. Still got that bite. And you still owe me a security deposit. He leaned in. I didn't know you were attached to the Venice project until Eli reached out. You mean until you told Eli to reach out? He raised a glass. Guilty. I'm not selling to you. You don't have a choice. That stopped her. He continued, smooth as a marble countertop. Technically, Juliet brought you on under my development umbrella. You work for me now. Audrey blinked. That's not how it was pitched. No. But that's how it's papered. She stood. You're out of your mind. He shrugged. Probably, but I'm also offering you a seat at a table that prints 7 figures. And I know you're not the girl who settles for open houses in the valley. She grabbed her bag. You don't know who I am anymore. He sipped his drink. That's what makes you interesting again. Back at the site, Juliet was waiting. Audrey didn't even sit. Tell me you didn't know. Juliet flinched. I didn't know it was him until last week. And you didn't tell me. I thought I could manage it. Keep you protected. I don't need protection, Juliet. I need partners who don't weaponize my exes like plot twists. Juliet paled. He said he'd pull funding if I told you. Audrey laughed. Short, bitter. Of course he did. He's just trying to rattle you, Juliet said. He knows you. That's his power. Then he clearly doesn't know this version of me. Audrey turned on her heel and left Juliet standing in a half-finished living room that suddenly felt like a monument to poor decisions. That evening, Audrey's phone exploded. Not with texts, with alerts. Audrey Langley's X-Files, real estate's most eligible heartbreaker. Photos of her and Eli, her and Grayson, even a blurry shot of Max from 2019, holding her hand outside a sushi place in Santa Monica. Someone had compiled a dossier of her dating history and posted it on a celebrity gossip site under the headline, Selling Homes and Hearts. Audrey clicked the author credit. Contributed anonymously. She already knew who it was. Max had always believed in controlling the narrative, especially when he wasn't the hero. She called Victor. I want out, she said. You walk, you lose commission. I don't care. There was a pause. Then, gently, he wants you to walk, Audrey. Humiliated. Hat. Like you're the problem. I'm not staying partnered with the man who humiliated me in print and tanked my engagement. Victor exhaled. Then burn it down. But burn it smart. The next day, Audrey showed up at the construction site with a legal folder and a smile. Juliet looked wary. Please tell me that's not your resignation. It's better, Audrey said. It's a proposal. Inside, a counteroffer, a restructuring, a clause. A new LLC formed in Audrey's name, backed by an investor Juliet didn't know Audrey had. A silent partner from her early days, now loaded from an IPO and bored of skiing. The clause, Juliet stays, Max exits. The bonus, Audrey takes full creative control. The threat, Audrey goes public with Max's harassment if he refuses. Juliet blinked. You're good. I'm tired, Audrey replied. There's a difference. 2 days later, Max formally withdrew. 3 hours after that, Juliet handed Audrey a hard hat with her name engraved on it. We still have to build, she said. Audrey smiled. Yeah, but this time, we pour the concrete ourselves. That night, Audrey watched the sunset from her Corrytown balcony. Wine in hand, heels kicked off. The article was still circulating. The internet still debated whether she was a villain or a victory story. And she didn't care, because for once, she wasn't selling the story. She was the story. And that meant she could write the next chapter, however the hell she wanted. Chapter 15. Open house, closed doors. The Venice property shimmered like a freshly iced cupcake. Gorgeous, overpriced, and engineered to seduce. It was the grand opening of the first home in Audrey and Juliet's now Max-free development, and the guest list read like an algorithm's fever dream. Influencers, designers, one D-list actor from a vampire show that peaked in 2012, and enough realtors to start a boutique cult. Juliet had hired a string quartet for the courtyard, and catered sushi flown in from Tokyo. Audrey had insisted on security, fire codes, and signage that didn't use Comic Sans. You really are the buzz, Juliet whispered, adjusting Audrey's sleeve as they stood at the entryway. You're like, if vengeance wore stilettos. I'm wearing boots, Audrey replied. I need traction when I dodge exes. Juliet smirked. Speaking of, don't even, Audrey said flatly. But it was too late. Eli was there, again, sipping champagne in a corner, making small talk with a producer who specialized in luxury home tours and probably unresolved childhood trauma. Juliet tilted her head. Want me to run interference? No, Audrey said. I'd rather suffer elegantly. The house was a hit. Potential buyers murmured appreciatively about the minimalist lighting and the emotional honesty of the breakfast nook. One woman tried to manifest in the yoga room. Another asked if the house came with this much feng shui, or if that costs extra. Victor was grinning like a proud father at a spelling bee. "You're a rock star," he whispered to Audrey as they passed in the hallway. "2 serious offers already. Neither from my exes, I hope. Not unless Eli's hiding a lottery win." She rolled her eyes. "No amount of money gets him a key to this house. All my life." Victor leaned in. "Then you might want to brace yourself." Audrey turned. Standing at the base of the floating staircase was a tall man in a tailored navy suit, holding a glass of red wine like it was an accessory. Salt and pepper hair, a jawline so sharp it could have filed down a lawsuit, and eyes that still knew exactly how to read her. Grayson. She nearly dropped her canapé. He walked toward her, like he had every right to. She met him halfway, like she didn't still dream of punching him once a quarter. "Hi," he said. Audrey crossed her arms. "What are you doing here?" "Victor invited me." Of course he did. Victor loved drama almost as much as he loved commission. "Brave of you," she said. "You usually only attend parties where you're the main attraction." Grayson smirked. "You look good. And you look like a corporate rebrand." He laughed softly. "I deserved that." "You deserve a lot of things. Closure isn't one of them." He held up a hand. "I'm not here to rehash. I'm here to buy." Audrey blinked. "You want this house?" "I want to invest in the next 5. I believe in your eye, your instinct, your chaos." "My chaos? What do you mean by that?" "You make messy things beautiful." "I figured. It's about time I backed the real thing instead of the next shiny object." She studied him. He looked sincere. But sincerity was his brand, right behind reluctant vulnerability and mansplaining crypto. "And what do you want in return?" she asked. "Nothing." "Liar." "Okay," he said with a grin. "One thing." She raised an eyebrow. "Dinner." Juliet cornered her in the kitchen 5 minutes later. "He's serious," she whispered, eyes wide. "He offered to back the full project build-out." "And dinner?" Juliet gasped, like someone had just pitched a sitcom about their lives. "Oh my God, are we about to become real estate royalty?" "I don't date royalty. I renovate their mansions and evict their mistresses." "But what if he's changed?" Audrey took a slow sip of sparkling water. "That's what they always say, right before they ghost you and start a podcast about emotional accountability." The offers came in that night, 3 in total, all strong, 1 anonymous. Juliet opened the email, frowning. "This one's from a trust based in Zurich." Audrey blinked. "How much?" "Over asking, no contingencies, full cash." They stared at each other. "You think it's max?" Juliet asked. "Possibly," Juliet exhaled. "You really need to stop dating men who also show up in money laundering documentaries." Audrey didn't laugh, because it wasn't funny. It was textbook, the kind of power move Max specialized in. Buying from the inside, outbidding on principle. But if it wasn't Max, whoever it was had deep pockets and an even deeper interest in her. And for the first time in months, Audrey didn't know what kind of move to make next. Chapter 16. Confessions and Contingencies. The thing about anonymous offers was that they made Audrey twitchy. Not the good kind of twitchy, like finding cash in an old purse or matching on Raya with someone who didn't lead with their yacht. No, this was the kind of twitchy that came from experience. Specifically, the experience of people trying to buy her literally, or figuratively wrapped in expensive paper and bad intentions. So she did what any woman with a bruised heart and a real estate license would do. She called her favorite escrow officer and pulled some strings. "Zurich Trust," the officer confirmed, filed through a holding group in Delaware. Super clean. No red flags. Audrey squinted at the phone, like it had betrayed her. Delaware is the red flag. Still, there was no proof it was Max, or Grayson, or even Eli, trying to win her affection with what he called symbolic gestures and what she called financial stalking. She wasn't about to accept 7 figures from a ghost in a Swiss account. without finding the skeleton behind the vault. Meanwhile, Grayson was trying capital T, champagne tea, annoyingly charming tea. He'd sent flowers, not roses, too obvious, or lilies, too funeral. No, he sent peonies, which Audrey once drunkenly called the Architectural Digest of flowers. He'd also sent a note. If we're building something new, I thought we should start with the demolition. Gee. She rolled her eyes so hard she sprained sarcasm, but she didn't throw them out. She put them in the kitchen, next to her stack of takeout menus and emotional detachment. Dinner was a mistake, but she showed up anyway. Grayson picked a rooftop spot in West Hollywood, the kind with ambient lighting and waiters who looked like they were auditioning for vampire movies. He stood as she approached, pulled out her chair, and somehow managed to look not smug about it. So, she said, sipping her overpriced Sauvignon Blanc, are you trying to buy my forgiveness or just distract me with carbs? Neither, he said. I just missed you. Audrey sighed. You can't skip chapters, Grayson. You ghosted me. You brutalized the ending. I panicked. Panicking is dropping your phone in a toilet. You didn't panic. You calculated. He didn't argue. Instead, he reached across the table, his voice quieter. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because I did. And I didn't know how to handle that. Wow, Audrey said. Therapy is working. He smiled. She didn't. Love isn't a startup pitch, Grayson. You don't get to fail fast and pivot. I know, he said. That's why I'm here. To fix what I broke. She wanted to believe him, but belief was expensive, and Audrey had spent enough. Back at her apartment, Juliet was curled up on Audrey's couch, with a bottle of Pinot, and the look of someone who'd either won the lottery or burned a body. Why do you look like you know something I don't? Audrey asked, kicking off her boots. Juliet patted the cushion. Sit. I have a confession. Audrey sat. Slowly. Please don't tell me you're the Zurich buyer. I can't go into business with someone who still uses my Netflix password. Juliet laughed, then stopped. It's about the buyer, sort of. Audrey's spine went straight. Juliet exhaled. It's not Max. Okay. And it's not Grayson. Getting warmer. Juliet handed her a folder. Inside was a name. A familiar one. Dana Klein. Audrey's old business partner. Her mentor. The woman who taught her how to close a deal. How to fake confidence. How to weaponize lipstick. Also, the woman who had cut her out of their firm 5 years ago and took the trademark with her. She's the buyer, Audrey whispered. Juliet nodded. She's been watching you, quietly, waiting. For what? A mental breakdown. An apology she'll never get. She wants to meet. Audrey slammed the folder shut. Absolutely not. She's offering funding, mentorship, an apology. She can keep the first two and shove the third. Juliet touched her arm. People change. So do locks. But that night, long after Juliet left and the city hummed with the noise of other people's ambitions, Audrey sat at her window, folder in hand, wondering what Dana really wanted. Because if there was one thing she'd learned in LA, it was this. No one shows up without a pitch. Chapter 17. The Return of Dana Klein. The coffee shop was one of those absurdly curated places in Silver Lake, the kind that served espresso with a side of attitude, and charged an extra $1 if you wanted your almond milk emotionally validated. Dana had chosen it. Of course she had. Audrey showed up in black, head to toe. Not for drama, though she'd never rule it out, but because black was armor, timeless, efficient, and very hard to stain with regret. Dana was already seated, sipping something iced and judgmental. She hadn't changed much. Sleek bob, designer blazer, the kind of confidence that could steamroll a boardroom or a barista. Audrey, she said, standing to kiss both cheeks, like they were still in the same zip code emotionally. Dana, Audrey replied. Still terrorizing the milk alternatives, I see. Dana smiled. You look good. I do, don't I? Still sharp. I am. They sat. For a moment, the hum of the cafe filled the silence between them. That, and the ghost of every meeting they'd ever had before things went up in designer label flames. Dana got right to it. I made the offer because I believe in you, and because I'm ready to repair what I broke. Audrey sipped her coffee. Is this the part where you tell me it was all a misunderstanding? No, it wasn't. I screwed you. I was scared you'd outshine me. And I was right. Audrey blinked. That wasn't the play she'd expected. Dana leaned in. I know what I did, and I know sorry doesn't fix it. But I built a lot of bridges after you left, Audrey. I've been mentoring new agents, funding women-owned firms. I even got therapy. Is that like Botox for the soul? Dana grinned. Something like that. Why me? Because you're doing it, Audrey. You didn't just survive, you thrived. And I want to be part of what you're building. Audrey leaned back. You taught me to read people, Dana. And right now, I'm trying to figure out if this is redemption or PR. Dana didn't flinch. It's both. I want to help you, and I want people to see that I helped you. Audrey appreciated the honesty, but it didn't make it any easier to swallow. She stirred her coffee with a metal straw, like it owed her something. I'll think about it. Dana smiled. That's all I ask. Back at the office, Juliet was waiting with Thai food and a look that meant trouble or tequila. Audrey dropped her bag. Don't say it. Juliet held up a spring roll like a peace offering. You met her. I did. And she's either genuine or has developed new sociopathic finesse. Juliet paused. And if she is genuine, that's the problem. I might actually believe her. Later that night, Juliet poured them both a drink and sat down like she was bracing for a storm. I have to tell you something, she said. Audrey blinked. If this is about you finishing my leftover pad thai again, I already know. Juliet shook her head. It's about the project and Dana. Audrey's stomach dropped. What about her? I reached out to her months ago. Silence. I knew we needed serious backing if we were going to grow. And I knew you'd never ask her. So I did. Audrey stood. Juliet. Just listen. I didn't make any deals. I just opened the door. She came to me. She wanted to see you succeed. And you didn't think to tell me. Juliet looked like she'd swallowed a cactus. I was trying to protect you. From what? From choices. From knowing the truth. Juliet's voice was soft. From getting hurt again. Audrey felt like the floor had shifted. Like the whole house she'd built, metaphorical and otherwise, listing on its foundation. She sat, finally, slowly. You can't protect me, Jules, she said. You can back me up, you can call me out, but you can't make my choices for me. Juliet nodded. I'm sorry. I know. Audrey stayed up late, with a pen in one hand and a list in the other. Pros, cons, risks, rewards. And at the bottom, in all caps, what would past Audrey do? Then, just below that, she wrote, what would future Audrey forgive herself for? Chapter 18. The Buyer and the Bought. The next morning, Audrey wore white. Not soft, ethereal white, the kind people wear when they're trying to look breezy and unbothered. No, this was a blazer and blood sport kind of white. Crisp, structured, the colour of surrender, worn defiantly. She walked into Victor's office like she owned it. Because technically, after the last deal closed, she sort of did. Victor looked up from his laptop. Uh-oh. That's your, I just made a decision and I'm not here for input face. Accurate, Audrey said, dropping a folder on his desk. He opened it. His eyebrows lifted. You're accepting Dana's funding? Yes, I am. He leaned back. You sure? No. But I'm done, letting the past write my present. Victor smiled. You're growing. I hate it. Juliet was quiet when Audrey told her. You're sure? She asked. I'm sure I'm done running from every ghost with a branded tote bag, Audrey said. Juliet nodded slowly. She'll want control. She can want whatever she wants. I'm giving her a stake, not a steering wheel. And if she tries to take over, I built this from nothing. I can rebuild it again. But this time, I'd rather do it with actual funding and better lighting. Juliet raised her glass. To strategic alliances and possibly stupid decisions. I prefer the term bold choices with soft landings. Audrey returned to the old office the next day. The one she and Dana had once shared, back when Audrey thought trust was something you gave, not something you negotiated. It hadn't changed much. The same minimalist art, the same espresso machine that required a PhD in thermodynamics, the same view of the skyline, distant and glittering like someone else's dream. Dana met her at the elevator. "You came. You paid," Audrey said dryly. Dana smiled. "Always did admire your sense of value." They walked together. Two women in heels, too expensive for how fast they were moving. "I don't want to relive the past," Audrey said, before Dana could begin some pseudo-spiritual apology tour. "Good," Dana replied. "Because I'm not interested in rewriting it. I'm interested in what comes next." Audrey handed her a contract. "You get 30% of the next 4 projects. No creative control. No team interference. You're an investor, not a savior." Dana flipped through it. "And what do you get? Closure, capital, and proof that I can outgrow the very tree that once tried to shade me." Dana signed without hesitation. "Congratulations," she said. "You just became everything I feared you were." Audrey smiled. "You say that like it's a bad thing." Outside, Audrey stood for a moment, letting the sun warm her face. It was ridiculous how something as small as walking into a building could feel like a war ending. But it did. It felt like she'd finally stopped dodging the wreckage and started controlling it. Juliet texted, alive? Or did Dana chain you to a vision board?" Audrey replied, "Alive and free, which in this town is basically a miracle." Later that week, she hosted a private tour of the next property, a unfinished hillside masterpiece with a view of downtown and enough potential to make HTTV salivate. Only 5 people were invited. Grayson was one of them. He showed up 10 minutes early, holding a paper bag. "What's that?" Audrey asked, eyeing it suspiciously. "Truce offering. Chocolate croissants. The good kind. From that pretentious bakery that spells bread with 2 E's. Bread?" He nodded. "Painfully artisanal." She took the bag. "You're trying too hard. Have you met me?" They walked the property together, and for once the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was neutral, maybe even hopeful. "You're really doing it," Grayson said, "without me." "That was kind of the point." He nodded. "Can I still be a footnote?" "You're more of a chapter," Audrey said. "A complicated one, with a warning label." He smiled, then grew quiet. "If I ever wanted to be more than that, would I have a shot?" Audrey didn't answer. She didn't have to, because she finally understood. Grayson wasn't her ending. He was her epilogue. That night, Audrey and Juliet sat on the roof of Juliet's building with wine, takeout, and the glow of a new beginning. "To us," Juliet said, raising her glass. "To rebirth, revenge, and real estate," Audrey replied. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel haunted. She felt home. Chapter 19. The Queen of Everything and Nothing. 6 weeks later, Audrey was in a different tax bracket. The funding from Dana had catapulted her boutique firm into something sleeker, faster, and more terrifying. The office now had a dedicated espresso consultant. Juliet was getting recognized in grocery stores by flippers and fiancés. Victor had bought a suit without clearance from his therapist. And Audrey was busy managing the one thing she never thought she'd have to: success. It wasn't glamorous. Success, it turned out, had receipts. Payroll, a paralegal who insisted on therapy goats, a building inspector who only communicated through passive-aggressive post-it notes. And the pressure. Oh, the pressure. It didn't come from above, or even from Dana. It came from within. That voice that whispered, "Don't screw this up, they're all watching." And worse, rooting for you to fail just enough to feel smug. The new project was a beast. A mid-century fixer in Laurel Canyon, with a view of the valley and enough asbestos to qualify as a historical biohazard. But it had bones. Sexy bones. The kind of structure that made architects use words like lines and flow while gently weeping into their sketchbooks. Audrey fell in love instantly. And then she realized it was too much. Too much time, too much capital, too much risk. Juliet, ever the realist, said it best. This place is a money pit with cheekbones. Audrey stared out at the view, wineglass in hand. You don't think we can do it? Juliet paused. I think you can. I'm just not sure you should. That night, Audrey sat in her apartment, surrounded by blueprints, invoices, and the distinct hum of burnout. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Her plants were dead. Her fridge contained only LaCroix and resentment. She had become what she'd once mocked, the woman who built an empire but couldn't find her favorite pair of shoes because her assistant alphabetized them by texture. And yet, there was something exhilarating about the chaos, the climb, the way her name was being whispered in meetings she wasn't even in. She should have been happy. She wasn't. The call came at 3:12 a.m. Victor, half asleep and full of bad news. There's been a permitting issue, big one. Audrey sat bolt upright. How bad? Bad enough that the city's threatening to halt construction. A pause. Also, Dana's been talking to the press. Audrey groaned. Of course she has. The article dropped the next day. Redemption Real Estate. How Dana Klein's investment revived a rising star. It was flattering and infuriating, and laced with the subtle implication that Audrey had needed saving. The comments section was brutal. She's just a pretty face. She's riding Dana's coattails. Bet she sleeps with her investors. Audrey closed the tab and threw her phone onto the couch with enough force to reboot it. Juliet looked over from the kitchen island. Want me to key her car? Audrey sighed. Only if we can bill it under public relations. That night, Audrey met Dana at her favorite rooftop bar in West Hollywood. Dana was wearing a smug little silk number and an expression that screamed, "Oops, did I capitalize on your trauma again?" I thought we agreed no press without clearance, Audrey said flatly. Dana sipped her drink. Technically, we agreed you wouldn't speak to the press. I made no such promise. You made it about you. Dana raised an eyebrow. You think people care about me? Please, you're the story. I'm just the convenient foil. Audrey stood. I'm not your project. Dana looked at her then. Really looked. You never were. You were my competition, and I underestimated how much that would cost me. Audrey didn't respond. She didn't have to. The silence said it all. The next day, Audrey pulled the plug. Not on the project, on the partnership. A formal letter, a termination clause, a buyout that left her bank account thinner and her soul significantly lighter. Juliet hugged her after the paperwork was signed. Victor looked like he might cry, but in a very professional way. You okay? Juliet asked. Audrey exhaled. No, but I will be. That night, Audrey went back to the Laurel Canyon house. She stood in the middle of the gutted kitchen, dust in her hair and possibility in her blood. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe, but it was hers. And for the first time in weeks, Audrey smiled. Chapter 20. The View from the Edge. The Laurel Canyon house was finished. 6 months of sweat, litigation, and spiritual tests disguised as contractors. The result? A clean-lined, light-drenched sanctuary perched on the edge of the hills, like a woman who'd survived heartbreak and had the hardwood floors to prove it. Audrey stood in the living room, barefoot on polished concrete, listening to the silence. She used to chase this feeling. Now it came to her quietly, like a dog that had finally stopped barking. Juliet arrived first, with 3 bottles of champagne and a guest list written on the back of a to-go menu. Who's coming? Audrey asked. Juliet shrugged. Everyone who matters, and a few people who don't but take good photos. The open house was utterly unhinged. The catering was Peruvian-Japanese fusion, because regular sushi is for people with no imagination. A violinist played Billie Eilish on the roof. A woman with exactly one eyebrow offered CBD-infused wine tastings by the fire pit. It was everything Audrey used to mock, and yet, somehow, exactly right. Grayson showed up late. He wore a navy blazer, and that sheepish expression men develop once they realize they're not the main character anymore. Nice place, he said, glancing around. You did it. I always do it, Audrey replied, sipping something pink and unnecessarily smoky. He offered a small, real smile. I know. They walked through the house together. The sun was setting, the sky bleeding oranges and lavender, like the end of something you never wanted to end. "I miss you sometimes," he said quietly. "I miss who I thought you were," she answered. They stood in the doorway of the primary bedroom, the view stretching out behind them, like forgiveness. "Would you ever give us another shot?" he asked. Audrey thought about it, about the girl who would have said yes just to prove she could fix it, about the woman who didn't need to anymore. "No," she said gently, "but I'm glad you asked." Juliet found her an hour later, hiding on the rooftop deck behind a potted olive tree. "You look terrifyingly content," she said, plopping down next to her. "I might be," Audrey admitted. "Isn't that gross?" Juliet raised her glass to disgustingly well-earned peace. The house sold 3 days later. Full asking, no contingencies. Buyer offered to name their firstborn after her. Audrey politely declined. Victor cried at the closing table. Again, very professionally. Dana sent flowers. No note. And Audrey. She moved into a new space. Something modest, chic, and close enough to walk to her favorite cafe, but far enough to still justify an Uber on lazy mornings. She kept the first blueprint of the Laurel Canyon house framed in her hallway, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of who she became when she finally stopped trying to win and just decided to build. Months later, Juliet and Audrey sat in a booth at Musso and Frank, sipping martinis and pretending not to watch a Netflix executive pitch a failing actor on the concept of a gritty musical. Juliet leaned back. "So, what's next?" Audrey smiled. "Anything. Everything. Nothing. You're annoying when you're balanced." "You say that like it's a problem." They clinked glasses. "I read something recently," Audrey said. "Said the best stories aren't about someone getting everything they want. They're about someone realizing they already had everything they needed." Juliet blinked. "Gross. Was that from a throw pillow?" "It was from a podcast. Thank you very much." Juliet snorted. "LA really has changed you." Audrey grinned. Maybe it had. But not all change was betrayal. Some of it was survival. Some of it was healing. And some of it was redemption. The end. I hope you enjoyed Property Hearts. It was fun to dive into these characters, and I have plans for a spin-off of 1 or 2 of them. Please leave a comment on what kind of story you are looking forward to next. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content. It really means a lot to have your support. Until next time, I'm Abby Turner. Take care.